All right. Hello, Vermont history students, to my house. Welcome. More specifically to my basement, to the music room in my basement. I give you a tour, but the camera isn't ambulatory. I've got keyboards and drum sets and more than a dozen guitars lying around. And this is the first video of the semester, the first of 12, because the course is divided into 12 units over the 6 weeks. And I'll be making one of these for each of the 12 units. My goal is to keep them short. I know that some people, when they teach online, don't use videos at all. Some people make hour-long, 2-hour-long lecture videos. I don't think anyone should want to watch that. I'd like to keep these at like 8 to 10 minutes at the most. And the goal is not to use them as lectures, but to address class issues, to introduce units, to get you caught up on where you should be, and to give you a little of an idea of what you're supposed to get out of the units, each of them. And the way you want to think about the construction of the course is that I used to teach this course in the summer on campus in person, and it would be 6 weeks meeting twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. And so you can think of it as like each unit is, if there's 2 each week, one is Tuesday and the other's Thursday. But obviously the way I think about it is it's sort of like the first unit is Monday and Tuesday, and the second unit is Wednesday and Thursday. And of course that's the nice thing about online courses, is that you can do them at your own leisure, at 3 in the morning or whatever you want to do. There are some important deadlines that pertain especially to the all-important contributions to class discussion on the discussion board. And those are that each unit, and there's 2 a week, has discussion questions, 1 or 2 discussion questions that I will post in the discussion board. And you need to respond to the first unit of the week by Wednesday morning at noon, and the second one by Friday morning at noon. And then secondly, I'm going to divide you into identities, into 2 groups, the uphillers and the downhillers. This will be explained more in the second unit, but it basically it correlates with hill farmers and professionals. Hill farmers being the uphill people who live on the tops of hills. And those are going to lead to hopefully raucous online town meetings in which you guys will address primary documents. And the deadline for responding to those is Mondays at the beginning of the next week by noon. Not the last 6th week, of course. That last town meeting you'll have to have that done by Friday, but otherwise you can have them done by Monday. And I do hope, of course, that once you go in and either vote on town meeting on the issues that we address, or contribute your opinions on the discussion board, that you will then return and listen, metaphorically, to what other people have to say as well. And that's a very important part of the course. The most important part is the interaction. So welcome, and my name's Paul, and I taught at UVM for 9 years, and then I moved over to Linden State, and it's cool. I like it. There's some things about UVM I miss, but it's cool. And I taught Vermont history at UVM, like every semester I was there. I was the first one to ever teach. I pioneered VS 52, the Vermont Studies course, which is cross-listed with this one. And I teach Vermont history every spring at LSC, and I teach it every summer. This is the 3rd summer I've done it online, and hopefully I'm getting good at this, and I'll do it really well. Although the feedback I received previous years was all positive. So hopefully we're going to have a really great time. There's some things you need to do at the beginning of the semester now. You need to go to the Blackboard page, go to the which I guess you're already there now because of this video, the Getting Started tab, and read that. Please do go to the discussion board and introduce yourself. Already 8 of you, I think, have introduced yourselves, which is wonderful. I didn't think you'd get around to that until Sunday or Monday, but that's great, and so I responded to those already. Also on the discussion board, there's a place for you to ask questions about the syllabus. The syllabus is online in its own tab, and you want to go and have a look at the syllabus, and then I'd prefer, rather than write me a personal email, if you'd address questions that you have about the syllabus or the course in general to the appropriate forum on the discussion board, because other people might have those same questions, and that's the best place to get that done. So review the syllabus and read the Getting Started tab and introduce yourself. And if you want, you can look at the assessment paper assignment. Those are the papers you'll be writing this semester, 3 of them. I will deal with that like next class. You don't have a chance to write your first assessment paper until next week, the end of week 2. So that's pretty much what you want to get done so far. This is the and then so what you want to do by like Monday or Tuesday is read the outline. Now every single unit, all 12 of them, will have an outline, and it's not a lecture. I try to keep them short, as short as possible if I can, but they're written words in which I try to explain to you where we're going with this unit, and hopefully tell a story or two that illustrates the message, the goal I'm trying to get out of it. It also will have its own learning outcomes, and that's the big rage with the learning outcomes. So each unit will have its learning outcomes and then ways to illustrate how do you get to that point. So outline number 1 is for the unit, and it goes up to 1775. And 1775 is when something called the Westminster Massacre happens. Now, the most important thing, actually, is that you should have your textbook by now. And it's Freedom and Unity by Michael Sherman and friends. And during an on-campus, in-person course, the textbook is fundamentally important. But it's even more important in this off-campus, in this online course. It's like the lectures. It takes the place of lectures. So when I say, like, you can read about the Westminster Massacre in the textbook, I mean, go in the index, or just read the whole section and get caught up on that. But that's sort of the end point. And then Unit 2 will deal with the revolutionary experience from 75, Lexington and Concord and Fort Ticonderoga, and then onward up to through the writing of the Constitution. And you really want to get by the end of Unit 1 to a place where you have some sort of sense about the ideological origins of Vermont and what those people who founded Vermont were like. They were common farmers playing a game called Provide Land for Kids. And what kind of a world did those people want to bring into being? The most important thing you can get out of this Unit 1 that I want you to understand and appreciate is that the legacy of the founders is very ambiguous. It can mean a lot of different things. You can use Ethan Allen or the founding experience of the state in order to support school consolidation or to oppose Act 46. And that's the wonderful relevant, why it remains so relevant and important to us, the founding experience, because it's hard to know what the founders were like. They lived in a pre-capitalist, on the whole, context. And we have so intrinsically absorbed capitalist imperatives into our own lives that it's hard for us to understand the mentality of people who lived in the 1760s. So it's a very ambiguous background, and that's important because when we get to town meetings, we'll go through time and address primary documents, and you want to argue with each other and be able to point to specific things that allow you to say, well, if Ethan Allen was here today, he would support what I support. The founders, I'm a true Vermonter because I live in the legacy, I've inherited the legacies of the founders. So that's very, what I want you to get out of this. There's the events, and the main sort of broad outline is that let's focus in the first unit on Bennington, the west side of the state. And New Hampshire handed out land grants to land that was in between the Connecticut and River and Lake Champlain in the 1750s. And it's not until after the end of the French and Indian War that people really can take up those claims. But some people from New England settled in Bennington on the basis of these New Hampshire land grants. And then New York colony laid claim to that land as well and thought that those land grants should be invalid. And they took their issue to the Privy Council in England, which ruled in 1764 that New York had jurisdiction over the area between the Connecticut River and Lake Champlain. But this left the question of the validity of the New Hampshire land grants in question, and that really sets you up for what the conflict was that produced the Green Mountain Boys. And so, especially after New York was given jurisdiction, it wasn't just a question of those settling in New Hampshire not wanting to have to buy their land again or get ejected from it, but also there were a host of things about colonial New York, government-wise, ideologically, that people from New England rejected. They didn't want to live in New York. So then the conflict begins, and because the land grants were devalued from New Hampshire, more people moved there. And so then New York had this big test case, the Privy Council, the Albany Court decision in 1769, which declared New Hampshire land grants invalid. and off you go with the Green Mountain Boys fun of the early 1770s. There was settlement in the east side during this period, and the settlement on the east side had a reputation, at least, of being bigger family groups, wealthier people, people who are more pious, more religious. And so there's a big difference between the east side and the west side, and a whole host of people on the west side, on the east side, were fine with living under New York land grants, bought New York land grants. New York was farther away, it seemed like less of a threat. But the big uniting, metaphorically in some ways, but also practically, the big uniting experience between the east and the west sides was the Westminster Massacre. 2 people killed in 1775. And that sets the stage for the Constitution, which is a document that comes out of trying to reconcile the needs and interests of lots of different kinds of people. People who supported Vermont but wanted different things from each other, people who wanted to be part of New York, part of New Hampshire, part of the British Empire still, very religious people, quite deistic people, and they had to craft a document that appealed to all these people. And so what they came up with is that Vermont would be the place that would reconcile the most fundamental contradictions of the human experience, the desire to be free and the desire to be unified. So what led them to this? So I have 2 questions for you that will hopefully get you to this point of appreciating the ambiguity and trying to get at what these people really were like and what they wanted. The first one is the Ethan Allen homestead and story, and I was on the board of trustees of it for many years. It's on the Intervale in Burlington. There was a historian in the 1960s, Ralph Nading Hill, who went up there and thought he could maybe find Ethan Allen's original house, and he found this old house, took off the vinyl siding and the additions, and it's probably from about that era. So it was turned into the Ethan Allen homestead, and tourists and school kids can go there and get the whole authentic Ethan Allen experience, except we're not sure it's his house. I mean, it might be his house. It very well could be, but we don't know for sure. The question for you, though, is does it matter? I mean, it does that thing where it introduces people to the world of the colonial era very effectively. But it might not actually be his house. We don't call it the Ethan Allen, maybe it was his house, maybe it wasn't. It's the Ethan Allen homestead. So this is about the ambiguity of the founders. Does it really matter if it's his house or not his house? Question number 1. Question number 2 has to be, what did these people who founded Vermont want? The most important thing that determined their ideology was that England had too many people and not enough land.